Welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. My name is Sarah Bizek. I am the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services and Disability Services. And Lucien, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Lucien Hambartsumel. I'm a master level psychologist and group therapy coordinator. And today with our director, Sarah Bizek, we will provide workshops, struggles with working remotely.
And I'm going to start us off with just some things that we want to kind of put out there that we're all agreeing on moving forward related to this workshop. Is that there's a big difference between working remotely by choice, by design, and doing it due to necessity. So what we mean by this and why we wanted to point this out is that there are jobs out there that a person chooses to go into because it is a job that they do remotely. They get training for how to be able to work their job remotely. They are given the equipment, it is designed that way, and they're choosing to actually be in jobs that have that portion involved. But also a lot of us right now are working remotely, including me and Lucien, due to necessity. So it wasn't necessarily something we looked at as a career. It wasn't something necessarily we got a lot of training on of how to be able to do this job remotely. And it doesn't mean that we necessarily were prepped on the different technologies and things. It's been a learning process as you went. And so while we go over some of these different things of how to be able to work remotely, I think it's important to remember that piece, that everybody's experience of working remotely could be very different and be at different places when they're kind of going that way. Secondly, we really wanted to point out that working remotely during a pandemic is different than working remotely not during a pandemic. So while we're working remotely, we're doing it for our own physical safety, for the safety of ourselves, for the safety of our loved ones, because this is what we need to be able to do and have the privilege to be able to do for our health. But it doesn't mean that the different stressors that are happening outside in the world don't impact us. So although we might be thinking, well, we're working remote, so we must be able to do everything we can and really be 100%, we really want to put out there to also give ourselves some grace that working remotely during a pandemic is very different and can cause a whole lot of different stressors that working remotely by choice in a different time may not include.
And I would like to talk about those challenges that Sarah mentioned when we are working and it's not our choice. We are facing a lot of challenges, and most of us, we were not trained to maintain remote work style. And one of the major challenges that everyone is facing, depend on their profession or field, it's office and home, that everything is combined. We don't have that opportunity for transition. Because before, when we were working in our offices, we knew that we need to be there from 8 to 5. This is our work time, and everything is set up for the work to be productive. Now we are trying to combine everything, our family life, personal life, our professional life in one space. And for some families, it can be really, really challenging because they don't have even enough space that everyone will be able to have an office or work area, and they need to try to discuss with each other when everyone can use this. But for full-time people who work like on full-time schedule, it can be extremely challenging. And sometimes people may feel like they are working too much. They are not only working during those 8-9 hours because they may get emails, they may get text messages, it's some kind of emergency situations, they need to respond immediately. They feel like their work is continuing and they are not able to start their life outside of the work because, again, it's the same space and they feel like they need to respond immediately because they have all those technologies like laptop, platforms and cell phones. It looks like they feel like requirement is there and demand is more. Challenges like interruption and distractions, like when you work at home, you are always feel like you may be distracted by many things, simple things like noises. And like if you have children, like they have some kind of needs for attention. If your family members, they would like to discuss, or you get some kind of phone calls and someone is waiting for you to respond, you always need to discuss those things and explain that during these time hours, if it's no emergency situation, I'm not available. It's like the way when you were working in offices, because people, they know like you're there from 8 to 5 and they were willing to wait until you will respond. Sometimes we have technology issues like internet connection issues when it's a bad weather or some kind of software application need to be updated, and you can feel like being in the middle of some kind of important meeting, or like for us in session, which I'm lucky, I didn't have the situation. I was able to maintain my sessions. It didn't got disconnected, but I know some of my colleagues, they were experiencing it. It's always important to have a backup plan, how you're going to contact and maintain clear communication. And when people are experiencing all those challenges, they may feel being burned out, and sometimes they are not as productive because it's not easy for them to maintain that good productive style of working. And during this workshop, we will talk which kind of tips we can use to help ourselves to go through challenges. Sorry, you're muted. Sorry, you're muted.
Perfect example of technology issues, right? Right there. So thank you for pointing that out. So I'm going to just go over a couple other different challenges of working remotely right now. Is the stress from wearing multiple hats. Again, Lucinda mentioned that many of us beforehand had our workspace and our home space, right? So we knew that in our workspace, we were colleagues, we were coworkers, we were doing our different jobs with our colleagues, and in our home space, we could wear our different roles as partners or as children, brother, sister, parents. But having all of that in one place is that we are wearing multiple hats. So again, I use myself as an example. So while working from home, I am still expected to be the therapist that I am and the director that I am. But I also have a 18-month-old child. And so trying to be able to manage that and say, okay, no, now is work time. Oh, no, now is parent time. And being able to kind of juggle that and turn those different hats. In addition, we are also wearing multiple hats in what our roles are. Lucinda mentioned technology, and a perfect example of me having mute on is that a lot of our training might be in different areas. It might not be in how to be able to do Zoom calls or webinars. It might not be on how to be able to set computers up and have different spaces available for us electronically. So we're also wearing those different multiple hats that we might not have experiences with, but need to be able to do to be able to perform our job performances. Also isolation. Again, having that team and that community amongst you when you go into your job really provides that support that we as therapists always talk about being so very important. And it's so easy to be able to be isolated. If you do not have a job where you're having any type of check-ins with your colleagues on a regular basis, it can really lead to that loneliness and feeling like you're an island working by yourself. Communication issues is also huge. So Lucinda also mentioned that we've had colleagues that during their different sessions, they've had interruptions. And that is absolutely true. I am one of those individuals who in different meetings that I've been on or different sessions I've been in is when we have internet issues or people freeze or we're missing those kind of nonverbal communications that we get when we're in person, when we're online. I know many of us who've been in Zoom meetings or at least seen those different videos of, fun experiences with Zoom meetings, note that a lot of times people will talk over each other or there'll be longer silences because we're missing out on those nonverbals that help us to be able to communicate in the day-to-day interactions while we're in person. That sense of pressure is definitely something that is very large as well. I've heard many people feel that this pressure that, okay, well, I'm not able to show people while I'm in person what I'm doing. I'm on my own. So I really feel this pressure that I have to be able to show that I'm being productive. I have to be able to prove that I'm working. I have to be able to respond again at all those different hours of the evenings. I must be able to really show that I am doing what I need to do and how overwhelming that can be able to be. And then that is definitely related to setting boundaries. So being able to say, yes, I am still working between 8 and 5 or whatever it might be. That means that 9:30 at night, I'm not working. Those same boundaries that we had when we were working in person should also be things that we look at now. But that's been a struggle for many individuals and what those expectations might be. And if there's any communication issues between you and your colleagues or you and your direct report, you might not really know what are the expectations of boundaries, what are the expectations of when you're available. And also bad health habits. I know that we have all talked about, and I've heard many times over the years, Sarah, just don't eat out and you'd be healthier. Well, I think many of us have shown, if we're cooking from home, that that may not exactly be true. You know, we might have the bad health habits that we're in a chair that is not made for us to be sitting in for long periods of time. I know myself, when this first came about, I was like, all right, well, we have an old office chair in the basement. Let's bring that up. It is not suited for me, and I'm sure throughout this presentation you'll hear its creaks and moans, because it is not appropriate really for me and being sitting in this long. It's an old chair in the basement for a reason. Also, not having places we can be able to set up to be able to have the space we need. I currently am using a folding table to be able to house my computer, which means I might be bent over more, which means I might be hunched over more. I also might be walking less because I don't have to walk to my car to get moving. I don't have those built-in breaks I can walk around with my colleagues. And I'm not really not be having that healthy separation between where I sleep, where I'm doing work. You know, Lucinda already mentioned that many of us do not have the physical extra spaces for offices, or maybe we might actually have those spaces, but there's multiple of us here. We have our children doing schoolwork. We have our husbands and wives and partners doing work in another room. And so we all might be in spaces that are not really set up in a way that gives us those healthy boundaries. I see one of the participants actually just pointed in, yes, having a computer on your lap. You know, I think that many of my colleagues can vouch for the fact that I've sometimes shown up for meetings when my computer is on my lap and then you're hunched over, but also that sometimes I'm laying on my bed just trying to stretch, because again, none of these spaces are really set up to be able to have as environments that we're working in.
Now, we talked about major challenges that all of us were facing, and now we would like to talk about some skills or tips that we can use to help ourselves to manage this new reality that all of us were experiencing. One of the important things for all of us, being able to create that workplace. And I can even share my experience when I'm providing therapy session or when I'm joining with my colleagues for staff meetings or case conference discussions. I'm in one place. But when I need to type and do some paperwork, I prefer to use my dinner table because it's big, it's easy for me to sit there and type and be focused. But this area that I created, it's like more safe place for my clients. It's always the same place. It looks the same way. I try to represent something what I will have in my office working and having the space for them. Trying to reduce distractions. We mentioned about this, it's a challenge. And again, trying to discuss with family members and having that calendar and schedule which kind of meetings everyone has. And if we can help each other to keep it a little bit more quiet, that other family member also can provide that work and be productive. Getting very organized, trying to keep almost the same schedule that you had working in your office, because this way you know what is happening during morning time, what is your schedule. And for us, for clinicians, I think it's easier because we have our clinical schedule and everything is there. We knew what need to happen, like it's a clinical work, working with client, it's a staff meeting discussion, it's some kind of paperwork that need to be done. But if you don't have this type of regular schedule, you feel like you have more flexible working style. It's really good be able to organize that, because it will help you to have that separation from work, and you are able to maintain your life outside of the work, even you're living in the same space. And mentally, we cannot change physically our space right now, but at least mentally we need to help ourselves to change. And it will help us to manage our time and energy, because for us professionals, it's not only being good with our timing, how we're organizing our time, but how we can mentally, physically, and emotionally save energy, because we don't know how long this will go. And right now, probably all of us during those 3 months, we passed that stressful, shocking experience when we need to do everything immediately. Now we have at least little bit understanding this is how it works, and we got adjusted, and we feel more connected with this style. But it's really good to organize everything, because again, it will help you to save that energy. Having simply, like from childhood, we hear this from our parents, from our teachers, simply having our to-do list. And this to-do list need to be very, very realistic according to the day task that we need to be able to accomplish. Don't take more, because you don't want to get frustrated that you have more things on your list that you were able to finish. and it will help you to prioritize tasks. And one thing that I would like to mention here, it's very important to figure out during the day when you are more productive, because all of us, we have the biological clock when we are more productive, our personal clock. Like some people tell they are more productive during morning days, they prefer more mentally challenging or intellectually challenging things to do during the time because they are more attentive, they may stay focused. Some people like to do that during the day, some people like to do late evenings. Try to figure out if you have some kind of important project that you feel it will take a little bit more energy from you, choose the time if it's possible, because I understand it's not always easy for some of us to be flexible when we can choose the time. But if you have that opportunity, definitely I will suggest.
So some other tips is keeping that good routine. So again, I think that as Susan mentioned, if you have a job that already has those hours defined, has those tasks defined, that can be easier to do. For many of us though, it might be, I have this project, I have a due date for that project, and that's it. So really trying to create a good routine to be able to accomplish that is going to be even more important at that point in time. Also, it helps people to keep up that work and life boundary more as well. I really like the thought that the positive things of working from home is about that flexibility piece for some of our jobs. So if you do know, again, as Lucinda kind of mentioned, that you are a night owl or you work better in the afternoons, how do you set up a routine to be able to accomplish that best and keeping into that routine? Related is that unplugging from work. So making sure that you don't feel that every moment that you're awake, that means you're at work. And this can be easier said than done for many of us, but the important piece of it as well. Having those different symbols, those different things to help transition. For many of us, when we were working non-remotely, it might have been our commute home, whether you were walking home or driving home or biking home. That was your time to build up that transitional time between work and not work. So creating your own transitional time with this. One of the things I personally do is I'm at work when this door is closed. I am not at work when this door is open. I do not have my computer up when I am not at work. It is closed. So figuring out ways to be able to unplug and move forward with that. Trying to start and stop work at the same time. Again, flexibility can be important, but being able to have those clear boundaries is also very helpful. Maybe the flexibility is that you can start your work at 10 o'clock and ended at 6 o'clock instead of when normally you're going to the office, you worked 9 to 5. That's great. It's still setting up that routine and starting and stopping work at the same time. Also tracking your time. It's so easy to be able to get swept up. I know in myself, in my own role, when I'm working on different projects, time sometimes goes by very fast. Track that time. Be aware of that time to make sure that you are putting up those healthy boundaries and making sure that you're setting yourself realistic goals and expectations and communicating that with your team, with your direct supervisor, so that you can be all done on the same page of what the expectations are. And then staying productive and aligned with your team. We mentioned that social support is so important, and working remotely can be so easy to be able to feel isolated. And if you're feeling that way, I think it's really important to be able to communicate that with your direct supervisor and have conversations about maybe some ways that you can be able to connect with other members of your team. So I know for one of the things that we have done as a team is make sure that we check in every day. We have an hour on our calendar so that if people want to share different things out, they can be able to do so, or just share what they've been doing, just socially, just to be able to connect. And again, that is the hope of that is not only that we can be able to communicate with each other, but so that we don't feel like an island and that we're all on the same page of what our different expectations are and how we're doing and how we can be able to provide that support with each other. So if you're not already doing something like that, or don't feel that you have a supervisor who might be open to that, reach out to those colleagues and coworkers who you used to talk to at the water cooler or wherever and say, hey, let's set something up so we can have these little huddles just to touch base. Even if there isn't anything official to touch base about, it can really help with that productivity, getting that support.
Now, it's very important for us to remember that it's okay not to be okay. If you don't feel as good, if you feel like you're stressed, it's very normal. Because even when we were working like our regular way, we had the days when we were very busy, we were feeling tired or exhausted. It's a normal part. Especially now when we feel like situation is more different. It requires from us more energy to getting adjusted and maintain our productivity and quality of work. You need to realize that some days it's not easy, and you need to be very patient and very empathetic with yourself. You don't need to feel like you need constantly approve. That's okay. Some days you may not be functioning as well as you are doing on your usual days. You always need to remember and know your limitations. If you feel like you cannot take more, it's always good to be honest with yourself, be honest with your co-workers, with your manager, and explain situation. Because I'm more than sure if it's a healthy work environment, you will be able to find support. Unfortunately, for some places, when they don't experience that they have that healthy interaction, it may be challenging, but in this case, you need to be more aware and try to plan and manage your work the way how you can handle without getting burned out. And how Sarah mentioned, like boundaries, it's extremely important to set boundaries on our work schedule, because right now when we sometimes extending the time of finishing something, feeling, oh, that's okay, I'm at home, I can do this, even if it's after 6 or 7 p.m. It's always good if it's, again, not emergency situation, and I understand sometimes we are in demand, but if it's a regular type of project or regular type of task that need to be done, try don't take that work after your work hours, or try don't do those things during weekends. This time need to belong to you, your personal life and family life. That's why it's very important to maintain healthy boundary, and sometimes you even can discuss with your co-workers and explain when this is the time, and if you see on my calendar, it means like this is my personal time, I'm not involved. Again, if it's not an emergency situation when you need to be there and support your co-workers. Staying connected, how Sarah mentioned, we are social beings. It's extremely important for us to maintain social connection, because those days some people, they may feel like they are isolated, they are so lonely, they don't have that human interaction. But again, our office was in such a good position having Sarah as a director. She was really good having those staff meetings that we can interact, we can share professional type of issues, we can have discussions, we can see how things can be done better way to manage many things. It's really, really important to have connection. And when we're talking about connection, it's not only your co-workers, but you also need to try to have a good connection with your family, with your friends, with people with whom you feel very comfortable. Because like next thing, what we mentioned here is like, make time for your favorite people, because when you have a time where you can have different type of discussions, or you can simply share that humor and have a good laugh, or any type of interaction, it's really, really help, because you know, like it's a trustful, and sometimes when you're frustrated, maybe you feel like you simply would like to vent. It's also good being honest with yourself. We don't need to try to be those shining stars and constantly approving others. We need to maintain and manage our well-being. It's extremely important during this type of time, because we need to keep very strong immune system.
Very good point. It's a very good point. So again, some more tips for working remotely, as we've already kind of mentioned a little bit about communication needs to be open and expectations need to be clear. And a lot of times we already mentioned that our jobs were not set up necessarily to be remote, right? So we're talking about individuals who now are going remote for all different types of reasons. That means that it might be new for the people that you report to as well. They hadn't thought about how to be able to, work remotely. They hadn't thought about how to be able to keep teams connected remotely. They didn't think about the importance of being able to have so much communication. So, feeling comfortable being able to say like, hey, I think it'd be really helpful for us to be able to have a way to be able to communicate with each other, to be able to touch base, make sure that we have those expectations of what needs to be done, and having that environment where you feel comfortable. Recognizing that, as myself speaking as a supervisor, this was all new for us too. And so a lot of it was trying to be able to figure this out without much training and how to be able to create work environments from remote. So feeling that you can be able to communicate and make sure that you have understanding of what expectations are. Taking breaks. So again, I think I know myself, I was really good at taking breaks. When I was in person, I would usually have 50-minute meetings and then a 10-minute break just to stand or walk or be able to go chat at a coworker's, door, just to be able to have some stretching. Do the same now. So even if you do not have that same type of structure built in, build those breaks into part of the structure you are creating for yourself. It is so important to be able to make sure that we are taking care of our physical health, to be able to make sure that we are taking those breaks, that we are stretching, that we are staying active. I know many people say, well, I can't leave the house. Well, you can be able to leave the house. You still can be able to get outdoors. Even when we were under more strict stay-home policies, it still was okay to be able to go outside and stretch and breathe in some air and walk around and really just be active. But even if that's something you're uncomfortable with, finding ways to be able to do it around your house. I know a good friend of mine who wasn't really comfortable with going out. They lived in an apartment. And so they just were like, there's really no way that I can be able to go out and really stay safe or distance around people. They used their stairs. They walked up and down their stairs, up and down their stairs, just to be able to stay active, because that not only helps our immune system, as was been mentioned, but it helps our mental and emotional well-being to be able to keep ourselves physically active. And it relates all together. If we're not taking care of ourselves physically, we're not going to be okay emotionally, mentally. If we're not taking care of ourselves mentally and emotionally, we're not going to be okay physically either. They're all connected together. So finding some different coping skills and things to be able to do. One of the things that I've been doing really for my own mental health that is connected to my physical health as well is taking bike rides. It really helps to be able to just clear my mind, have that separation, and still create social distancing, keeping myself safe, and being able to get some physical activity. So kind of finding some different things that you can be able to do to be able to take care of yourself. Because if you're finding yourself having those tension headaches or those eye strains from being in front of computers all day, that is definitely a sign to be able to build in some more of those breaks, but also to be able to find some ways to be able to work out some of that tension that your body is trying to tell you that you're having. I was on a call yesterday with a colleague of mine who talked just about that they found themselves the first couple weeks of working remotely popping ibuprofen every day at 5 o'clock because their eyes hurt from staring at the computer, their back hurt from being punched over. I said, something's got to give. I cannot live off ibuprofen to be able to get through this over the next several months or however this might last. And so they looked at not only their physical space and made sure they were propping up that computer, but they built in breaks so their eyes would not be so strained. They got those different blue screen light reducers so they would not have those lights that can be really difficult for our eyes. They looked at the lighting in their room and changed that. Is that the biggest thing that helped them though was at 5 o'clock every day, instead of just drudging out of their back room and going on to the next activity of life, they went and they worked out for a half hour. They got on an exercise bike. That, again, a privileged place that they were able to have an exercise bike in their house, but they rode on their exercise bike for a half hour. And what they found was those headaches and those backaches, they started going away. So it really shows the importance of making sure that we are taking care of ourselves and recognizing the different things that might come with working in these environments.
Sarah, I really like that you mentioned about taking a break from the screen, because now when all of us, we spend so much in front of screen, it need to be probably in list for the routine that after 8-9 hours, I don't need to spend time in front of screen, because it's too much. It's too much for everyone. And again, everything what you mentioned about like physical activity, taking care of self and self-care aspect, it needs to be number one right now. And I only would like to add one thing. In case if you're noticing that your mental health is changing, like you're experiencing something that you didn't experience before, even like you were working, you were always busy, but it's some kind of new type of conditions you're experiencing, be careful and try to see if with taking care of yourself, you are able to reduce. That's great. It means you're working, reducing your stress and tension that you were accumulating mentally and physically. But if you feel like it's something that it's different, and even with taking care of yourself, it's not leaving you, I will suggest that it's definitely time for you to contact and make appointment with professional, because sometimes we may miss some of our conditions and symptoms. Like, it's a good to be aware. And if our students are listening us and you feel like it's not easy to handle everything, we're always there for you, and you can always contact counseling and psychological services and have like better understanding what is happening with you right now.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Lucien, because I think that is very important, is that a lot of times we can downplay what we're experiencing, right? You can say, well, everybody's going through a rough time right now, or everybody's adjusting. And while that is true, or could be true, it doesn't mean our experience is any less than. It doesn't mean our experiences aren't valid experiences. And I think that there's always this belief that if I'm seeking out mental health services, it means something must be really wrong. Well, yes, you can definitely seek out mental health services because something's really wrong. You can also seek out counseling to say, hey, I'm struggling with this and I want some other ideas. Or, hey, I think I'm doing okay with this, but I do wonder if I could do better at this. You know, just to be able to have a conversation with another individual, you know, and have a professional to be able to kind of help you kind of look through some different strategies is a really important thing to be able to do. And all students do have access to that. We continue to take on new students. We do the telehealth appointments to be able to maintain social distancing. But it's really easy to be able to contact us. Just email us at umdearborncap@umich.edu, and we'll get you all set up to be able to touch base with some of us, to be able to find out what might be some ways to help you in your own personal experience be able to adjust to these different surroundings we're at. So we're at the point where we just want to check base to see if any of the people who are participating live with us have any questions. So while we wait to see if anybody does, and if you do, just put it in the chat. Just like to point out too, if you're watching this not live, and so that you're watching this as a recorded session, and you have questions that we did not get to, or ideas or thoughts, you can also email us again at that umdearborncaps@umich.edu, and we'd be glad to be able to answer those questions for you, or always open to different feedback or suggestions that we can be able to pass on to others as well. I'm looking, I don't see anything in the chat right now. Okay. All right. Well, I think that we are good to go. So again, thank you again for joining us, and hopefully this helped at least validate that this can be a difficult situation for many of us, but also that there are different tips we can be able to do to help be able to take care of ourselves, and giving ourselves that permission to also be not okay. There is so much going on within our country right now. It's okay to not be okay. I think it's something that if I had to take anything away from this seminar to really highlight, it would be that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, and have a good day, and please take good care of yourself and accept the reality. Don't try to fight with this reality too much. It can be very stressful. Try to adjust, try to learn how you can help yourself to maintain your life and well-being in this type of situation. Thank you.
Everybody.